Thank you for reminding me, Santosh Mataji. So today's verse, okay, maybe I'll come back to that, is text number 17. A very, very important verse, a verse that has been quoted by Srila Prabhupada numerous times, very often, and it's very, very relevant also for us. Shrinvata swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtanaha Hridayantastoi abhadrani vidunoti surit satam. Word for word synonyms. Shrinvatam. Those who have developed the urge to hear the message of Swakata, his own words. Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Punya, virtues. Shravana, hearing. Kirtana, chanting. Hridayantasta, within one's heart. He certainly, abhadrani, desire to enjoy matter. Vidunoti, cleanses. Surit, benefactor. Satam, of the truthful. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanse desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Purport. Would anyone like to read the first paragraph?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes, please go ahead, Sarati Prabhu.
Messages of the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna are not different from him. Whenever, therefore, offenseless hearing and glorification of God are undertaken, it is to be understood that Lord Krishna is present there in the form of transcendental sound, which is as powerful as the Lord personally. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Sisashtaka declares clearly that the holy name of the Lord has all the potencies of the Lord, and that he has endowed his innumerable names with the same potency. There is no rigid fixture of time, and anyone can chant the holy name with attention and reverence at his convenience. The Lord is so kind to us that he can be present before us personally in the form of transcendental sound, but unfortunately we have no taste for hearing and glorifying the Lord's name and activities. We have already discussed developing a taste for hearing and chanting the holy sound. It is done through the medium of service to the pure devotee of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Take paragraphs.
Can I read it, Prabhuji?
Yes, sure, Mataji. So you can read the second and third because they are short ones.
Okay. The Lord is reciprocally responded to his devotees when he sees that a devotee is completely sincere, is getting admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord, and has thus become eager to hear about him. The Lord acts from within the devotees in such a way that the devotee may easily go back to him. The Lord is more anxious to take us back into his kingdom than we can desire. Most of us do not desire at all to go back to Godhead. Only a very few men want to go back to Godhead. But anyone who desires to go back to Godhead, Sri Krishna helps in all respects. One cannot enter into the kingdom of God unless one is perfectly clean of all sins. The material sins are products of our desires to Lord in it over material nature. It is very difficult to get rid of such desires. Woman and wealth are very difficult problems for the devotee making progress on the path back to Godhead. Many stalwart in the devotional line fell victim to these allurements and thus retreated from the path of liberation. But when one is helped by the Lord Himself, the whole process becomes as easy as anything by the divine grace of the Lord. Can I?
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank
Would you like to carry on? Okay, you carry on, read the last
Yep.
part.
Can
Yeah.
To become,
Prabhu?
shall I carry on or someone else will read?
Yeah, can I read, Prabhuji?
Yes,
Okay,
sure.
let's see Mataji read.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
To become restless in the contact of woman and wealth is not an astonishment, because every living being is associated with such things from the remote time, practically immemorial, and it takes time to recover from this foreign nature. But if one is engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord, gradually he realizes his real position. By the grace of Lord, such a devotee gets sufficient strength to defend himself from the stage of disturbance, and gradually all disturbing elements are eliminated from his mind. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. A very, very beautiful verse. And the purport, when I was reading the purport today again, I was just so touched by Srila Prabhupada's purport. Anyway, let's first put this verse into context. Yesterday we spoke, or we mentioned that these verses 16 to 21, they explain the bhakti progressive stages of bhakti. So we know that there are 11 stages that are described in the Shastras. It starts off with Shraddha, faith. Faith is the beginning of the path of bhakti. And when one has a little faith, then he thinks, let me associate with the Lord's devotees. That's called sadhu sangha. And after associating with the Lord's devotees, then one develops an inclination to practice what the Lord's devotees are doing. And that's called bhajana kriya. Bhajan means practices. And after practicing, starting the practice, this starts the process of clearing the unwanted things in the heart, which is called anartha nivriti. And after one cleanses the unwanted things in the heart, one becomes fixed. And that's called the stage of nishta. And when one is fixed in one's devotional practice, then taste starts to develop. And that's called ruchi. And when one develops taste, then one's attachment for the Lord starts to really develop. And that's called ashakti. And when that ashakti condenses, the first rays of the sun of prema starts to arise, and that's called the stage of Bhava Bhakti. And when that sun fully manifests, that's called the stage of prema. So these texts that we are studying, and we can pay careful attention to how these different verses embody and encapsulate these different stages from text 16 to 21. So yesterday we studied text number 16, which was a very beautiful text where it is explained the essence of that verse was, by serving the devotees of the Lord, one develops an affinity to hear Krishna Katha. Because we've been in this material world for so long, although Krishna Katha is natural to the soul, because in the spiritual world, that's what happens. And in the liberated state, Satatam Kirtayanto Mam. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, the nature of one who has reached the highest stage of bhakti one is constantly engaged in Krishna Katha. But we don't have taste, and therefore the whole process is being held back. But text 16 says, when one serves the devotees of the Lord, then one develops an affinity to hear Krishna Katha. So this verse leads on naturally from there. So when Krishna sees that someone has an affinity to hear the Katha, his Katha, the Lord does something quite amazing. Quite amazing. Srila Sutta Goswami is saying, when Krishna notices someone having an affinity to hear his Katha, he personally, as the super soul within the heart of such a person, he cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages. So we shall discuss that point a bit more. It's very, very important. What is interesting is, I want to stop here. When Srila Prabhupada landed in America, Srila Prabhupada landed in Boston Harbor. And when Prabhupada landed in Boston Harbor, he looked out at the Boston skyline. And when he looked out and he saw the skyscrapers and he could see the traffic and he could see a completely foreign civilization to what he was accustomed to. We should remember that Srila Prabhupada had come from Vrindavan. Prabhupada had spent much time at the Radha Damodar temple. So when he looked out, he saw that this Western world was fully under the influence of the mode of passion and ignorance. And Prabhupada was remembering his spiritual master's instruction to him to preach Krishna consciousness to the Western world. And when Prabhupada looked at the Boston skyline, he felt quite overwhelmed at the task which lay ahead of him. And while on the Jaladuta, on the 18th of September 1965, Srila Prabhupada wrote this most beautiful poem. It's called Makini, Bhagavat, Dharma. And I'd like to read to you because this verse features in this poem, and it gives us an insight into how Srila Prabhupada saw the solutions, because it's very applicable to ourselves. So Srila Prabhupada writes, I'll only read the English, not the Bengali. My dear Lord Krishna, you are so kind upon this useless soul, but I do not know why you have brought me here. Now you can do whatever you like with me. But I guess you have some business here. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this terrible place? Most of the population here is covered by the material modes of ignorance and passion. Absorbed in material life, they think themselves very happy and satisfied, and therefore they have no taste for the transcendental message of Vasudeva. I do not know how they will be able to understand it. So Srila Prabhupada is expressing his helplessness, seeing the power of the modes of nature in Boston. But I know your causeless mercy can make everything possible because you are the most expert mystic. How will they understand the mellows of devotional service? Oh Lord, I am simply praying for your mercy so that I will be able to convince them about your message. Just imagine Srila Prabhupada is also addressing us. All living entities have become under the control of the illusory energy by your will. And therefore, if you like, by your will, they can be released from the clutches of illusion. I wish that you may deliver them. Therefore, if you so desire their deliverance, then only will they be able to understand your message. The words of Srimad Bhagavatam are your incarnation. And if a sober person repeatedly receives it with submissive oral reception, then he will be able to understand your message. It is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shrinvata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridayantasto Abhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. So Srila Prabhupada then quotes all of these verses from the Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada got strength from these words of Sutta Goswami, that by serving the devotee of the Lord, they will develop attraction or an affinity to hear the message. And when they develop the affinity to hear the message, then Krishna, the Lord, will personally enter the heart of such a person and cleanse the person of all of the unwanted things. So this process of anartha nivriti, removing the anarthas in our heart, is significant. Is significant. Prabhupada in the purport says something, writes that one cannot enter into the kingdom of God unless one is perfectly cleared of all sins. And Prabhupada makes this point repeatedly. One has to reach the stage of Suddha Sattva. Sattva good means the mode of goodness, and Suddha Sattva means the mode of the stage of transcendental goodness. Some other places Prabhupada writes, Krishna is the supreme pure. To serve the supreme pure, we have to be pure. And Prabhupada writes, one has to be perfectly cleared of all sins. Now, when we read such a statement, then, it almost seems a hopeless situation. And Prabhupada drives home this point even further in the following statements. He said, it is very difficult to get rid of such desires. That means material desires. And in particular, Srila Prabhupada says women, or the opposite sex, and wealth are very difficult problems for the devotee making progress on the path back to Godhead. And Prabhupada says, very eloquently, Prabhupada writes, many stalwarts, forget ourselves, Prabhupada says, many stalwarts in the devotional line fell victim to such allurements and thus retreated from the path of liberation. So nicely expressed by Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, meaning stalwarts, the unwanted things in the heart. Prabhupada says they fall victims to the allurements and retreat from the path of liberation. But then Prabhupada gives us hope. And he said, but when one is helped by the Lord himself, the whole process becomes easy as anything by the divine grace of the Lord. So Prabhupada just said previously that it is very difficult. And then our Prabhupada says it all becomes very easy. And what is the catalyst for it to become easy? The catalyst is our affinity to hear, our eagerness and our sincerity to hear about the messages of Krishna. Because when Krishna observes that in a devotee, Krishna personally enters into the heart and cleanses the devotee of all the unwanted things. in the Prabhupada very nicely expresses that how Krishna is eager. He's actually more eager for us to return to him than we ourselves are. And this whole process of how Krishna feels towards us is expressed very nicely in the Nectar of Devotion. In the Nectar of Devotion, I think it's chapter number 21. The 64 qualities of Krishna are described, very nicely described by Srila Rupa Goswami. And Srila Rupa Goswami quotes various evidences from the Shastra to explain Krishna's 64 qualities. And the 17th quality of the Lord, of the 64 qualities that Srila Rupa Goswami mentions, is that Krishna is grateful. One of the qualities of Krishna is he's grateful. And I'll read to you from Nectar of Devotion because it's very interesting how Krishna's gratitude manifests. So Srila Rupa Goswami writes, any person who is conscious of his friend's beneficent activities and never forgets his service is called grateful. In the Mahabharata, Krishna says, when I was away from Draupadi, she cried with the words, "Hey Govinda, this call for me has put me in a debt, and that indebtedness is gradually increasing in my heart." This statement by Krishna gives evidence of how one can please the Supreme Lord simply by addressing him, "Hey Krishna, Hey Govinda." The Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is also simply an address to the Lord and his energy. So to anyone who is constantly engaged in addressing the Lord and his energy, we can imagine how much the Supreme Lord is obliged. It is impossible for the Lord to ever forget such a devotee. It is clearly stated in this verse that anyone who addresses the Lord immediately attracts the attention of the Lord, who always remains obliged to him. Another instance of Krishna's feeling of obligation is stated in connection with his dealings with Jambavan. When the Lord was present as Lord Ramachandra, Jambavan, the great king of the monkeys, rendered very faithful service to him. When the Lord again appeared as Lord Krishna, he married Jambavan's daughter and paid him all the respect that is usually given to superiors. Any honest person is obliged to his friend if some service has been rendered unto him. Since Krishna is the supreme honest personality, how can he forget an obligation to his servitor? So when a devotee shows eagerness and sincerity in wanting to hear the messages of Krishna, it says Shrinvata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana. Kirtana, Shravana and Kirtana is described in this verse. So when this quality of Shravana and Kirtana is shown by a devotee, then Krishna feels extremely grateful to such a devotee. Prabhupada writes, it is impossible for the Lord to ever forget such a devotee. So Krishna feels in such a situation great obligation. And how does Krishna reciprocate? Krishna knows that such a devotee, Krishna wants the devotee to return. But Krishna knows there is a big obstacle. There's a big obstacle in all of the anarthas from lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes that is there in the devotee's heart that keeps the devotee in an impure state. So Krishna, as this verse is saying, what does Krishna then do? Krishna is described in this verse as Surat in the Bhagavad Gita, in the peace formula. Bhaktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam. It is described that Krishna is Surat. Surat means a well-wisher. You know, sometimes Krishna's, there's many names for friend. Sometimes it's called a Saka. Sometimes he's called Bandhu. And sometimes he's called Surat. So Surat means well-wisher. So Krishna, he sees himself as the well-wisher, in particular to that devotee who has developed an affinity to you. And then Krishna purifies that devotee, purifies the devotee of all the unwanted things in the heart. He cleanses the devotee of all of the unwanted things in the heart. And some things are particularly very difficult to get. The desire for contact with the opposite sex, meaning the desire for fame and the desire for wealth. His Holiness Indadumana Swami was saying how once he went to the Kumbh Mela. And in this Maha Kumbh Mela, actually, he says, you know, all of these great teachers, and saints, and sadhus that have lived away in the mountains, away from civilization, they come out and they come to the Kumbh Mela to take bath. And some of them come with all of the disciples. And sometimes they ride on elephants. And Indadumana Swami was saying how you would notice that these sadhus, these great sadhus, somehow or the other, when they sit on the elephant, you can see and you can detect some traces of pride still some traces of pride. So these anarthas, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, the desire for fame, a devotee should consider it to be like stew and should give it up. So these anarthas, they are very, very deep-rooted anarthas. And to get rid of them, requires power and strength of purification, which in most instances, we as tiny jivas. In one letter, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he describes the living entities, ourselves, as a very tiny particle. And he says, we as a tiny particle, fragmental part, we have no power by ourselves to overcome this material nature. But by the power of Guru and Krishna, all impurities within the heart can be removed. And one becomes more and more attracted to the messages of Krishna. And Prabhupada says here, by the grace of God, such a devotee gets sufficient strength to defend himself from the state of disturbances. And gradually, all disturbing elements are eliminated from his mind. Prabhupada writes the word gradually. The process of purification, this stage of anartha nivritti, sometimes it's called the vast intermediate zone for a devotee. But the anecdote, the cure, is to always listen eagerly and sincerely to the messages of Krishna. And as long as we do that, the Lord will remain very disposed towards us. And the Lord from within, as the super soul, he will clear off all of the unwanted things in the heart. So this process in these verses, it's being described by Srila Sutta Goswami. They are so practical, and in one sense, they are so simple. One time Srila Prabhupada said that Krishna consciousness is so simple that we may miss it. We may miss it. All we have to do is the power of these years are just unbelievable. We just have to expose these years to Krishna Katha. And everything will fall into place from there. Vidunoti cleanses, Krishna cleanses from within that, Hridayantasta. So this is a very beautiful verse. What's the time now? Oh, it's 25:2. We should stop maybe and take any questions or comments. Prabhupada says the word abhadrani, or the desire to enjoy matter, that means anarthas. The anarthas. And there are different types of anarthas. And let's see if I can quickly find, while you think of your questions, I had Prabhupada describe sometimes on my notes different types of anarthas. Yeah, desire for getting material wealth, desire for having followers, the desire for a beautiful woman or handsome men, and the desire for liberation. These are the really big anarthas that we have to overcome. Okay, dear devotees, I'll stop there. Any questions, comments, or reflections? Please share with us.
Hare Krishna, Vrindavan, Chandra, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All grace to Srila Prabhupada. Such a wonderful way you have explained to us this verse. It's so nice. And yes, I have heard Srila Prabhupada mention many times this verse, and many times he recites to explain Srimad Bhagavatam or others. And especially you, giving us this about Srila Prabhupada, how he felt when he went to New York, and how he was feeling about the whole thing. And he felt so responsible because being a pure devotee, how responsible he felt, that how he can help, how he can lift the spirit of all the materialistic people who are there suffering. He felt the suffering of the people. He just, sometimes we are not, because we are not so purified, we don't feel the suffering of people. We just think, oh, we may be criticizing, oh, this, but Srila Prabhupada really felt their suffering, and he really wanted to lift, and by the mercy of his Guru Maharaj, really, that's why he's really begging Krishna to help him to what he can do to serve Krishna, to all the fallen souls. So it was very, very nice, very pleasing to the heart. And the way you explain the whole verse, it's really very peaceful. It makes our mind very peaceful. And I did thank you. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for your reflections, Palika Mataji. Yes, Prabhupada took great strength from these verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada, I was listening to a class, when was it, last night? Prabhupada said, I went to America, all I did was I chanted Hare Krishna, and I spoke two types of katha, the words spoken by Krishna, which is Bhagavad Gita, and the words spoken about Krishna, which is Srimad Bhagavatam. And from there, this entire society, as we see and experience, has now come. Simply from, Prabhupada said, giving people the opportunity to hear.
Because he is empowered by Krishna, isn't it? So that's why it happened.
Yes.
So
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Namrata Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I have to say, what a powerful message. It was so potent. Every single word was just so blissful, Prabhuji. But Prabhuji, that leads to some more questions because, and if you could expand on what do you mean by anartha nivrutti? And also, Prabhuji, when you said about one of the anartha is thinking about liberation, did I understand that right, Prabhuji?
Yes.
Yeah. And also, Prabhuji, about wealth, because I thought, Prabhuji, it's okay to go after wealth if I'm using the wealth for buying books of Krishna, or I'm not saying I'm using all of the wealth, Prabhuji, but I thought that it's okay if we're doing our duty and thinking about how do we use the wealth in the right direction as well. So if you could expand on those three, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, let me see if I've captured them all. So I got the one about wealth. I got the one about liberation. And what was the first one? I missed that.
The anartha
Anartha, okay. All right.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So this anarthas, it's very described in much detail by Srila Vishnava Chakravarti Thakur in a book called Madhurya Kadambini. And essentially, anarthas means the unwanted things within the heart. And these unwanted things are there from the many lifetimes that we find ourselves in the material world. But the ultimate anarthas, as the Lord explains in the Bhagavad Gita, is this mood of iccha and dvesha, wanting to be the enjoyer and wanting to be the controller. Those are the most deep-seated. And these anarthas, they are very, very deep-rooted. These are like layers of covering unwanted things in the heart. And they hold us back in our bhakti. So the fourth stage on the progressive stage of bhakti is called anartha nivritti, removing those. Because unless, as Prabhupada says, unless we've removed those anarthas, there's no question, there's no chance of us joining the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is where the hard work takes place in bhakti. That's where we have to put in the effort. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written a beautiful book called Bhakti Aloka. And he says, those who are not patient, Dairyat, those who are not patient, for them, they cannot do the hard work. Like sometimes, people come to Krishna consciousness and they hear about, these processes, and then they think to themselves, yeah, within 1 year, I will be a pure devotee. And after 1 year, they still find out there's lots of anarthas. Some of them conclude this process doesn't work, and they leave. But Srila Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Instruction says, Utsahan Nischayan Dairyat. Dairyat means patience. We have to have patience, and we have to be prepared to do the hard work. The hard work simply means, it's not really hard work, but it means being diligent, attentive, regulated in our Shravana and Kirtana. And if one sticks to this process of Shravana, Kirtanam in the association of devotees, then the anarthas will be removed. It may take some time, but it will be removed. So that's the first part. The second part of your question was it liberation? My handwriting, I can't even see now.
Yes, Prabhuji.
It's liberation, yeah. Yeah, liberation means impersonal liberation.
Okay.
Or the 4 types of liberation. A devotee does not even want liberation, because pure devotional service is so pleasurable that even liberation seems insignificant. So even the desire for liberation is considered to be an anartha. Yeah. And then the second point you made, I can't read my writing now. Please remind me.
Wealth,
Wealth.
Prabhuji.
Oh, wealth. Oh, yes, wealth. Wealth per se is not an obstacle. It's not really an anartha. But when one wants to use the wealth for one's sense gratification, then it becomes. And the problem is, the more wealth one has, then, just because of our nature of being unchaste, just being in this material for so long, we're always prone to use wealth for sense gratification. So, yeah, I mean, Prabhupada said, we in Krishna consciousness, we need so much of resources. We want to start farming communities. We want to publish and distribute books. We want to open up centers. And there's always a scarcity of finances. If one feels one is strong enough to get wealth and not be swayed by wealth, then that's very good. And one is able to use it in Krishna service, that is very good. But Prabhupada says in the Bhagavad Gita, even on the royal road, there's accidents. So there's a word, it comes with some caution.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Surya, who you have your hand up?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanavad Pranam. I just joined because I was in a train. Can I ask a small question, please?
Yeah, sure.
Permit? Prabhuji, I was at the starting and the class was very divine. The slokas were divine. Thank you so much. One of the slokas said we should have a one-track focused mind on Sri Krishna. I don't know how to do that. Prabhuji, very helpful.
Sorry, your question is how to have a single focus.
One of the shlokas said, have solely focused on me, or have single track mind focused on me, something like that.
Yeah, the most practical advice I heard in connection with this, Prabhu, is we should try to associate with those devotees who display this quality of single focused attention on the path of bhakti. And when we associate with devotees who have this level of focus, then automatically it will rub off on us. It will rub off on us. The other piece of advice I've taken in past is to have the goal our goal very, very clearly and substantially fixed in our mind. And when that goal is substantially fixed, then whatever obstacles or distractions come, then we can deal with them. So there's just two thoughts that come, Prabhu. Associate with those who display these qualities, and then have the goal fixed in our mind. Okay. I hope that answers your question, Prabhu.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Can I just ask one supplementary question, or maybe another day? If it, Prabhuji, it's very useful to know we should have one goal in our mind. Sometimes my ambition is just to chant all the time. I don't know why. That's what I heard in my childhood. But then things happen, like mantras are put on us or distractions are put on us, so that we don't get so focused on the Maha Mantra or on Krishna. And then I don't know what to do, but fighting against it. But if it's specifically against not chanting, I don't know. We try, but sometimes it's difficult when obstacles are deliberately put.
Yeah, that's just how it is during the stage of anartha nivritti. It's called anishta. Anishta, Srila Vishnava Chakravarti Thakur. And maybe we can speak a bit more in some future class about this anishta stage, unsteadiness, and what advice is given. But the general advice, Srila Prabhupada says, just continue to hear. And the other day, Chandra Swami Maharaj was giving class, and he said, Prabhupada said, just hear. Whether it's not of the right quality, you have doubts about anything, just if there's an opportunity to hear, just hear, put this message through your ears. and everything will happen from there.
Thank you, Prabhuji. That's golden words. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
We have one announcement, but before we make the announcement, if anyone's has any other reflections or comments, please speak.
Hare Krishna, Vrindavan, Chandra Prabhu.
Hare
You know,
Krishna,
that day
Maharaj.
Chandramani Maharaj was also saying, you know, Chintamani Mataji, we actually started learning how to discuss, you know, with a small group. Discussion I found is very, very helpful. You know, like-minded people getting together. When I try to understand one sentence, then actually when other person try to hear it and reflect it back with their own understanding what they understood, it really helps to get focus on the scripture. I found it very, very helpful. Chintamani Mataji really taught us. She had a lot of seminars. We used to go into the temple when there was no COVID. We were doing it regularly. We used to go a lot of people all together. We used to go on Tuesdays, and about 2 hours we used to just pick up. We used to do from the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. We used to do one sentence, and everybody would try to understand that sentence, what it really means. And then it goes on, the other person also try to understand. That way we get really focused within the understanding of the sentence. So that's really, I found it very, very helpful, actually. Very, very helpful.
Yeah, many devotees have said the same thing, that, you know, Krishna Dharma Prabhu and Chintamani Mataji.
Yes, actually I learned from them.
Good. Yeah.
It's really, really, that's how I got into the discussion of, I have in my Sangha group, I have a little small group. We get together every Monday evening. So we do that every Monday. So that's yeah. And also I got 2 groups. It's really helpful. Thank you.
In our session, you know, one thing I do feel bad about sometimes, it just, you know, like when I facilitate, I seem to be doing more of the speaking and, you know, less sharing, but this is just the nature of the time constraints we have.
Yes, yes.
But devotees should get together, you know, you have friends on this group, everyone should get together and discuss and chant, and every day after we speak, you know, you can tomorrow morning get together and make a phone call and chant and do your own realization. This is just like a little
very nice way to do it. I found it very helpful. Thank you. I just thought I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So one announcement, dear devotees, Santosh Mataji is making an arrangement, a very nice arrangement for some personal association and get together. So she's arranging on the 11th of April at 12 noon at Govinda's restaurant in Soho Street. That's the coming Monday, 11th of April at 12 noon. She's made a reservations, I think, for 20 people, 20 devotees. It'll be so nice that whoever can make it can get together and join us. Santosh Mataji, do you want to tell a bit more, say a bit more about the arrangements?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Yes, we have one of our chat members who is coming all the way from Belgium, Anju Mataji, who is in our association at the moment. She has joined us. So I thought it would be a nice way to welcome her and to get to know her, and we can all meet each other. Like Prabhuji just said, it's a nice opportunity to get together. I thought, why not use this occasion? Not only will we get to meet Anju Mataji, who is coming all the way from Belgium, but we can all meet each other. And what a better way to get together. So if anybody would like to join us on Monday at 12 noon, please contact me and I'll give you further details. Thank you. I hope to see some of you there if it's convenient. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you for making such arrangements. We are a personal movement. Many of us, you know, we even feel shy to put our cameras on, so we do not even know how many of us look. So having that personal get-together really strengthens our relationships, and I would encourage if anyone has the opportunity to do that. Thank you so much. So we'll conclude now with our Vaishnava pranams. Thank you very much, dear devotees, for your And I can, only thing I can think is many of you all have been coming to the chat sessions for so long. It must be because you have taste. You have taste. And you have the mercy of Lord Krishna. Panchakalpatarubhyascha Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Prabhupada ki jai.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Wonderful session, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice class.
Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you
Hare
for the
Krishna.
wonderful class. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Wonderful class. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Pranam Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Pranam. All glories to Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.